Secure the rigging! She's going under!
No rigging left to climb, no masts standing, no lifeboats in the davits. 32 bunks below deck, every blanket folded, every man gone. The clipper drifted past Cape Horn with sails intact, helm lashed, galley stove still warm. No blood, no struggle, no crew. 10,000 sailors died in these waters between 1850 and 1914. 800 ships rest on the ocean floor where the Atlantic and Pacific collide without land to stop the wind. Official maritime records call it the sailor's graveyard. Storms explain wrecks, ice explains delays. But what explains an iron ship found empty with coffee still hot? The coordinates sit at 56 degrees south latitude. There is no land at this parallel except for the rocky spine of Cape Horn, the southernmost point of the Americas. To the west lies the Pacific Ocean, to the east the Atlantic. Between them runs the Drake Passage, 600 miles of open water where 3 ocean currents meet without interference. Sailors called it the fetch. Wind travels across water and builds waves. The longer the distance, the taller the wave. At Cape Horn, there is no continent to break the wind's path. It circles the entire globe at this latitude, accelerating with every mile. The waves that result are called Greybeards. They reach heights of 90 feet. A 10-story building made of moving water. Between 1850 and 1914, the only route from the Atlantic ports to California's goldfields was around Cape Horn. The Panama Canal did not exist. Railroads across North America were incomplete or unreliable for cargo. Ships had no choice. They sailed south into the fetch. The journey from New York to San Francisco took 120 days in calm weather. In Cape Horn weather, it took twice that. Some ships never arrived at all. Captain Thomas Reeves commanded the British Isles, a steel-hulled bark of 2,000 tons, in 1905. His logbook survived. The ship did not complete its passage until 71 days after first sighting the Horn. Reeves wrote in careful script about waves that struck the hull with such force that iron plates buckled inward. He wrote about rigging that froze into solid rods, useless for adjusting sails. He wrote about men washed overboard in water so cold that their bodies seized before they could scream. The British Isles lost 9 crew members between March 14th and May 24th. Reeves noted each death with the same phrase in his log: "Committed to the deep, no recovery possible." The ship that appears in the 1873 engraving held by the Maritime Museum in Greenwich shows a 3-masted clipper heeled at 45 degrees, waves towering over the main deck. The artist, a former sailor named William Hodges, painted from memory. He sailed the route twice. He recorded specific details: the angle of the masts, the height of the spray, the way men clung to ratlines with both hands while their feet swung free in the air. Hodges wrote a single line beneath the image: "This is what it looks like before the ship goes under." No telegraph lines reached Cape Horn. No rescue stations operated in these waters. A ship in distress had no way to call for help. The nearest harbour sat 400 miles to the north, in the Strait of Magellan. By the time a vessel reached that distance, the storm was already over. Ships either survived or they did not. There was no middle outcome. The crew of a Cape Horn clipper numbered between 30 and 40 men. Most were not career sailors. They signed on for the pay. A single voyage from Liverpool to Valparaiso could earn a deckhand 3 months' wages in a factory. The work required no formal training. A man needed strength and the ability to follow orders. The mate taught him how to reef a sail and splice a line. Everything else he learned by watching others or by dying. First, mate John Carrick kept a diary during his passage aboard the Morning Star in 1861. He described the cold in exact terms. At dawn, the temperature measured 28 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind came from the southwest at 40 knots. Spray froze on contact with the deck. Within an hour, The entire surface was coated in ice, half an inch thick. Carrick wrote that men could not stand upright without holding a rail. Those who fell slid across the deck and struck the bulwarks with enough force to break ribs. He recorded 3 injuries before noon. By evening, 1 man was dead. The body went overboard without ceremony. There was no time to stop. The storms came without warning. Barometric pressure dropped, but the instruments available in the 1800s lacked precision. A captain might see clouds building on the horizon. He might notice a shift in the wind. By the time he gave the order to reduce sail, the storm was already on top of the ship. Winds reached 70 knots. Waves struck from multiple directions as currents collided. The ship rolled so far to one side that water poured through the hatches. Pumps ran constantly to keep the hold from flooding. If the pumps failed, the ship sank in minutes. But the wrecks left evidence. Wreckage washed ashore on the islands east of the Horn. Broken spars, shredded canvas, pieces of hull with the ship's name still visible. Maritime insurance companies kept records of every confirmed loss. The files listed the vessel's name, tonnage, cargo, last known position, and probable cause of sinking. Between 1850 and 1900, the records documented 432 total losses in Cape Horn waters. The causes included storm damage, collision with ice, structural failure, and fire. 79 ships vanished with no wreckage found. No debris, no bodies, no final transmission. The insurance files mark these cases with a single word: disappeared. The Admiral Gardner was one of them. An iron-hulled clipper of 1,400 tons, she departed Liverpool on January 6, 1877, bound for San Francisco with a cargo of Welsh coal and machine parts. The manifest listed 34 crew members under Captain Edward Mills. The ship carried provisions for 150 days. Her last confirmed sighting occurred on March 2nd off the coast of Staten Island, just east of Cape Horn. A passing steamer, the Cordelia, noted the Admiral Gardner's position in its log. The weather was clear, seas were moderate. The clipper showed all sails set and appeared to be making good speed. She was never seen again. No wreckage from the Admiral Gardner ever reached shore. No cargo washed up on any beach. No bodies were recovered. The ship simply ceased to exist. The insurance company's investigator, a man named Peter Hollis, traveled to Staten Island and interviewed the lighthouse keeper there. The keeper confirmed that he had seen a 3-masted ship pass the point on March 2nd. He could not confirm the name, as he had no telescope powerful enough to read markings at that distance. Hollis searched the coastline for 2 weeks. He found nothing. His final report, filed in April 1877, concluded with a question he could not answer. How does a ship of that size disappear in clear weather without leaving a single trace? The survivors spoke in similar terms. Cold that turned rope into iron. Waves that struck like solid walls. Wind that screamed through the rigging with a sound they compared to factory machinery running at full speed. But the most consistent detail in their accounts was not about the storm itself. It was about what happened to the compass. Second mate Robert Ashford testified before the Board of Trade Inquiry in London on August 12, 1883. He had served aboard the Clipper Meridian during a Cape Horn passage that lasted 94 days. The ship lost 11 men and arrived in San Francisco with damage to every mast. Ashford's testimony included a description of an event he could not explain. On April 9th, during a storm 40 miles southwest of the Horn, the ship's compass began to spin. Not drift, spin. The needle rotated continuously in the housing, making a complete revolution every 3 to 4 seconds. The ship's chronometer, a precision instrument kept in the captain's cabin, stopped at the same moment. When the storm passed 6 hours later, both instruments resumed normal function. Ashford stated that the captain ordered the compass checked for damage. There was none. The mechanism showed no sign of interference or wear. The inquiry's chairman, Admiral Sir Henry Prescott, asked Ashford if other ships had reported similar incidents. Ashford replied that he had heard the same story from crews of at least 4 other vessels. He named them: the Artemis, the Carolina Dawn, the Northern Light, the Suffolk Trader. All had experienced compass failure near Cape Horn during electrical storms. The minutes of the inquiry record Prescott's final question, verbatim: "Did you observe any other phenomenon at the time the compass failed?" Ashford answered yes. He described lights in the rigging, blue-white flames that appeared on the tips of the masts and yardarms. They moved along the metal fittings without burning the wood or canvas. The phenomenon lasted approximately 20 minutes. Sailors called it St. Elmo's fire. The official explanation for St. Elmo's fire is atmospheric electricity. During storms, the air becomes charged with ions. Metal objects accumulate charge and discharge it as visible light. The phenomenon is well documented in maritime records and occurs in many parts of the world. But the compass failure had no official explanation. Magnetic fields can be disrupted by electrical activity, but not at the intensity described in the Cape Horn reports. The compasses did not simply deviate, they spun without stopping, as if the magnetic North Pole had ceased to exist. Between 1860 and 1900, 23 separate incidents of compass failure near Cape Horn appear in official logs. 12 occurred during storms with St. Elmo's fire. 11 occurred in clear weather. The Board of Trade investigated 7 cases. Their conclusion, published in 1896, stated that the cause remained unknown, but that the failures posed no immediate danger to navigation as long as the ship maintained visual contact with landmarks. This conclusion ignored a critical fact: Cape Horn has no landmarks. The nearest land is rocky coastline obscured by fog and spray. A ship with a failed compass in these waters had no way to determine direction except by the position of the sun, if visible, or the stars, if the sky was clear. During a storm, neither was visible. The ship was blind. The waves themselves defied the mathematics known to 19th century naval architects. An 1874 study by the Royal Society measured wave heights in the North Atlantic and calculated a theoretical maximum of 60 feet under extreme conditions. The measurements relied on observations from ships equipped with calibrated instruments. In 1899, Captain James Larkin of the Clipper Oceanic recorded a wave height of 92 feet during a Cape Horn storm. He measured it by observing the ship's main mast. The mast stood 95 feet above the waterline. When the ship descended into the trough between waves, Larkin could see the crest of the following wave above the top of the mast. He noted the observation in his log with a sketch showing the relative positions. The Oceanic survived. 6 men did not. They were swept from the deck when the wave broke over the bow. No theory explained how water could stack that high. The Royal Society's calculations assumed a consistent wind direction and a uniform ocean floor. Cape Horn had neither. The Humboldt Current flows north along the Chilean coast, carrying cold water from Antarctica. The Brazil Current flows south along the Argentine coast, carrying warm water from the equator. Where they meet, the temperature difference creates instability. Add wind from the west at 60 knots, and the result is a collision of forces that amplifies wave height beyond predicted limits. The sailors had a simpler term for it. They called it the Greybeard, a wave so large that its crest turns white with age before it breaks. But not all disappearances occurred during storms. The packet ship Resolution left Montevideo on June 4, 1868, bound for Cape Town with a cargo of hides and salted beef. Weather reports from other vessels in the area described calm seas and light winds. The Resolution carried a crew of 29 under Captain William Farnsworth. She was sighted by the whaler Dolphin on June 7th, approximately 100 miles east of Cape Horn. The Dolphin's log noted that the Resolution appeared to be making slow progress under reduced sail. No distress signals were observed. The Resolution did not arrive in Cape Town. She did not arrive anywhere. No wreckage was ever found. The Lloyds of London investigation file, archived in 1869, contains a single-page summary. The investigator, Harold Kemp, noted that the Resolution was a sound vessel with an experienced captain and a full complement of stores. He listed possible causes of loss: collision with ice, structural failure, fire, mutiny. Each cause he then eliminated based on available evidence. Ice was unlikely in June, which is winter in the southern hemisphere, but not severe enough for large bergs that far north. Structural failure would produce debris. Fire would leave scorch marks on floating wreckage. Mutiny would require the crew to have somewhere to go, and the nearest land was 400 miles away with no boats reported missing from any port. Kemp's final sentence reads, "Cause of loss cannot be determined from available information." There were others. The brig Constellation lost 1871. The bark Falmouth lost 1879. The full-rigged ship Manchester lost 1885. Each case followed the same pattern. Last seen in good weather. No distress signal. No wreckage. The maritime insurance records give numbers, but no names for the men aboard these vessels. 216 sailors vanished with ships that left no evidence of their destruction. And then there were the sightings that made no sense at all. In March 1892, the Chilean naval vessel Chacabuco encountered a 3-masted ship drifting 30 miles south of Cape Horn. The Chacabuco's captain, Ramon Vidal, ordered his helmsman to approach. As the distance closed, Vidal observed that the unknown ship's hull was covered entirely in ice. Not just the deck, the entire hull, from waterline to rail, encased in a layer thick enough to obscure the portholes. The sails hung frozen in their rigging, rigid as sheet metal. Vidal could see no movement aboard. He ordered a boat lowered to investigate. Before the boat could launch, the wind shifted. The ice-covered ship began to move, not with the wind, against it. Vidal watched as the vessel turned slowly to the southwest and accelerated, sails still frozen, into water where no ship under those conditions should be able to navigate. The Chacabuco gave chase for 20 minutes. The ice ship pulled ahead. Vidal abandoned pursuit and recorded the incident in his official log. The Chilean Navy's response, dated April 1892, instructed him to remove the entry and submit a revised log without the sighting. He refused. The original log is held in the Naval Archive in Valparaiso. The ice ship was never identified. The bodies told a different story than the reports. When wreckage came ashore with remains still aboard, the condition of the dead did not match the official cause listed in maritime records. The bark Shenandoah wrecked on the rocks of Isla de los Estados in February 1874. Local fishermen found the hull 3 days after the storm passed. 12 bodies remained trapped below deck. The Chilean Port Authority's medical examiner, Dr. Eugenio Marquez, conducted autopsies in Punta Arenas. His report, filed March 8, 1874, documented fractures inconsistent with drowning or impact with rocks. 7 of the 12 showed compression injuries to the ribcage, the sternum crushed inward, lungs collapsed. Marquez compared the damage to what he had seen in industrial accidents involving hydraulic presses. He noted that drowning victims do not exhibit this type of injury. Neither do victims of shipwreck who strike debris or hull plating. The force required to produce these fractures had to come from above and below simultaneously, as if the men had been caught between 2 solid surfaces and compressed. The Shenandoah's official loss report, issued by the Liverpool insurance assessor in April 1874, attributed the deaths to drowning following hull breach in heavy seas. It made no mention of Marquez's autopsy findings. The discrepancy appeared in a summary published by the British Medical Journal in 1876 in an article examining traumatic injuries in maritime casualties. The article's author, Dr. Edmund Crowley, wrote one sentence about the Shenandoah case. The physical evidence suggests a mechanism of death not currently explained by accepted maritime disaster models. Other wrecks showed similar patterns. The Clipper Seahawk broke apart on the western rocks of Cape Horn in October 1881. Salvage crews recovered the stern section, which contained the officers' quarters. Inside the captain's cabin, they found Captain Richard Dunmore's body still seated at his desk. The desk was bolted to the floor. Dunmore's hands rested on the logbook, which lay open to the final entry. The entry was dated October 9th, 1881, at 1400 hours. It read, "Barometer 28.2 and falling. Wind southwest at 40 knots. Reduce sail to storm canvas. All hands secured below except watch." Below that, in different ink and shakier handwriting, "Pressure equalization failing. Hull integrity." The sentence ended mid-word. No period. No signature. The salvage report noted that Dunmore's body showed no external injuries. His eyes were open. His jaw was locked in what the report described as a grimace. The ship's surgeon, whose body was found in the adjacent cabin, had died in a similar position. No water was found in either man's lungs. The logbook from the Seahawk resides in the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. The final page shows a dark stain in the lower right corner. No explanation exists for how Dunmore sustained an injury severe enough to bleed while sitting at his desk with no visible wounds on his body. Survivors who made it through Cape Horn Passage spoke about waves that broke the rules, not just in height, but in behaviour. Third Officer Arthur Penrose of the Clipper Northern Star testified before a Board of Trade inquiry in 1897. He described an incident from April 14, 1896. The Northern Star was running before a gale, wind from the west at 50 knots, when the lookout shouted a warning. Penrose turned to see a wave approaching from the port quarter. He estimated its height at 70 feet. The wave was not part of the regular swell pattern. It appeared alone, a single wall of water moving faster than the surrounding sea. Penrose ordered the helm hard to starboard. The ship began to turn. The wave struck before the turn completed. Penrose described the impact as being hit by a moving building. The ship rolled 40 degrees to starboard. Water swept the main deck clean. 6 men went overboard. The wave passed in under 10 seconds. The sea behind it returned to the normal storm pattern, as if the giant wave had never existed. The inquiry asked Penrose if he had observed anything unusual before the wave appeared. He said yes. The water in front of the wave was flat. Not calm, but compressed, as if something beneath the surface was pushing upward. He said it looked like the sea was taking a breath. Then the wave rose and struck. The Board of Trade classified the incident as a rogue wave, a known but poorly understood phenomenon where multiple wave patterns intersect and create a single wave of extreme height. The classification did not explain why the wave moved faster than the wind that created it, or why the water flattened before it appeared. Between 1870 and 1900, 41 documented accounts of rogue waves appear in Cape Horn shipping logs. 18 of those accounts describe the same flattening effect observed by Penrose. In every case, the wave appeared without warning and vanished after a single strike. No instrument existed that could predict them. No procedure existed to avoid them. A ship either survived the impact or it did not. The albatross became part of the explanation sailors told themselves. The birds followed ships for hundreds of miles, gliding on the wind without flapping their wings. Sailors believed they were the souls of dead captains, watching over the living. To kill an albatross brought immediate disaster. The belief was older than the written record, but it intensified around Cape Horn. In 1863, the whaler Perseverance out of Nantucket shot an albatross for sport. The bird fell to the deck. Within an hour, the wind shifted to a gale. Within 6 hours, the Perseverance lost her mainmast. Within 12 hours, she was taking on water faster than the pumps could clear it. She made it to harbour in the Falklands with 9 feet of water in the hold. The captain, Josiah Hammond, wrote in his private journal that he would never again allow a bird to be harmed aboard any ship he commanded. The journal is held by the Nantucket Historical Association. Hammond's final entry, dated November 1868, was written the day before his ship, the Atlantic, vanished without trace south of Cape Horn. but the birds themselves behaved in ways that had no folklore to explain them. Naturalist Edmund Blake travelled aboard the Royal Mail packet Dover Castle in 1877, documenting wildlife in the Southern Oceans. His field notes, published in 1879, include observations of albatross behaviour near the Horn. Blake recorded that the birds would sometimes circle a ship for hours, then suddenly veer away and disappear, all at once, as if responding to a signal. When this happened, Blake noted, a storm always followed within 3 hours. He timed it on 6 separate occasions. The interval never varied by more than 20 minutes. Blake wrote, "The birds possess a sensitivity to atmospheric conditions that no instrument available to us can match. What they detect and how remains unknown." Ball. On March 3, 1906, the German cargo ship Heidelberg radioed a distress call. The message was brief. Position 55 degrees 40 minutes south, 71 degrees 10 minutes west. Taking water. Pumps failing. The Heidelberg carried wireless telegraph, one of the first commercial vessels in these waters to do so. The message was received by a shore station in Punta Arenas. No further transmission came. A rescue vessel reached the position 18 hours later. They found debris, broken planking, a section of railing, one lifeboat, capsized and empty. No survivors. The Heidelberg's manifest listed 43 crew and 6 passengers, 49 people, gone. The wreckage covered less than 200 square yards of ocean. For a ship of 2,200 tons to break apart so completely in 18 hours, the force involved would have to be extraordinary. The rescue report noted one detail that the crew found difficult to explain. The lifeboat they recovered showed no damage, no cracks, no missing oars. The hull was intact, but it was upside down in the water, 100 miles from the nearest land, with no one in it or near it, as if the people aboard had simply let go. Between 1850 and 1914, 10,000 sailors died in Cape Horn waters. 800 ships were lost. These are not estimates. They are documented in maritime registries, insurance claims, and port authority records across 3 continents. The numbers include only confirmed losses where the ship's name and last known position were recorded. They do not include vessels that simply fail to arrive at their destination with no record of departure, or small coastal craft that operated without formal registration. The actual number is higher. How much higher cannot be determined from surviving records. The explanation for what happened at Cape Horn is not supernatural. It is geographic. The Earth's surface at 55 degrees south latitude contains almost no land mass. South America ends at Cape Horn. The nearest land to the west is New Zealand, 7,000 miles away. Nothing interrupts the wind. In meteorology, this is called fetch, the distance over water that wind travels without encountering an obstacle. At Cape Horn, the fetch is effectively infinite. Wind accelerates across the entire circumference of the planet. When it strikes the narrow gap between Cape Horn and Antarctica, it compresses. The compression increases wind speed. Higher wind speed builds taller waves. The waves stack on top of existing swell patterns, created by the intersection of 3 major ocean currents: the Humboldt Current from the south, the Brazil Current from the north, and the Antarctic Circumpolar Current that flows west to east without stopping. Where these currents meet, water moves in multiple directions simultaneously. Waves collide. When 2 waves of equal size meet, they do not cancel out. They combine. A 30-foot wave meeting another 30-foot wave becomes a 60-foot wave. Add wind, add current, add the pressure differential created by rapid changes in barometric pressure during storms, and the result is a wave that exceeds 90 feet in height, not a rogue wave. A predictable outcome of known physical forces. The compasses failed because Cape Horn sits at the intersection of multiple magnetic anomalies caused by variations in the Earth's crust composition. Iron ore deposits beneath the ocean floor create localized magnetic fields. During electrical storms, these fields intensify. A compass needle, which is simply a magnet aligned to the Earth's primary magnetic field, will respond to any stronger local field. If that local field is unstable or rotating due to atmospheric electricity, the compass needle will spin. The phenomenon is rare but not unique to Cape Horn. It has been documented in other regions with similar geological conditions. The difference is that at Cape Horn, the combination of magnetic anomaly and lethal weather conditions left no survivors to report what they had experienced. The ships simply vanished. The ice-covered vessel seen by Captain Vidal of the Chacabuco in 1892 has a simpler explanation. When a ship is abandoned in sub-freezing temperatures and left to drift, spray from waves freezes on contact with the hull. Each wave adds another layer. Within 48 hours, a ship can be completely encased. If the hull remains intact and the cargo provides enough weight for ballast, the ship will continue to float. Wind and current move it. To an observer at a distance, it appears to be sailing, even with frozen sails and no crew aboard. Where the crew went is a separate question. The most likely answer is that they abandoned ship during a storm, believing the vessel was going to sink, and died in the lifeboats. The ship, more durable than they assumed, survived without them. But the decision to continue using Cape Horn as a primary shipping route, even as the death toll mounted, was not a matter of physics. It was economics. British and American shipping companies operated on a margin that required the fastest possible delivery times. The route around Cape Horn, despite its dangers, was faster than the only alternative, sailing east across the Atlantic, around the southern tip of Africa, and across the Indian Ocean to reach the Pacific. That route added 60 days to the voyage. 60 days meant lost contracts, spoiled cargo, and ships sitting idle while competitors claimed market share. The companies knew the risks. The insurance records prove it. Premiums for Cape Horn voyages were 3 times higher than for any other route of comparable distance. The companies paid the premiums and sent the ships anyway. When the Panama Canal opened in August 1914, Cape Horn traffic dropped by 90% within 6 months. The canal offered a route that was shorter, safer, and eliminated the need to face the Greybeards. The ships stopped sinking. The death toll stopped rising, not because the ocean changed, because the route changed. The decision to use Cape Horn for 64 years, knowing it would kill thousands, was not forced by nature. It was a choice made by people who did not have to sail through the storms themselves. The maritime insurance files from Lloyd's of London contain loss reports for every ship that vanished near Cape Horn. Each report ends with the same phrase: cause of loss, perils of the sea. The phrase is a legal term. It means the loss was caused by natural forces beyond human control, and therefore the insurer is obligated to pay the claim. But the phrase also serves another function. It removes responsibility. Perils of the sea implies that no person or institution could have prevented the loss. The evidence suggests otherwise. The routes were known to be lethal, the weather patterns were predictable, the wave heights were documented, the compass failures were reported. And yet the ships kept sailing because the cost of 10,000 lives spread across 64 years was less, in accounting terms, than the cost of finding a different route. 800 wrecks remain on the ocean floor. No markers, no recovery operations. The bodies stayed where they fell, in water too deep and too cold for decomposition. The wreckage field shows a pattern. Ships clustered in the same 5-mile radius where the currents intersect and the fetch reaches maximum force. They knew where the danger was. They documented it in logbooks and insurance reports. If the risk was measured and the death toll predictable, who decided those lives were expendable?